I'm Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
Excuse the intrusion. It's Friday. We are the CRM Players, and we're talking sports. And we're going to be talking a lot because there's a lot going on in the sports world, and we have a really cool guest that will be joining us in a few minutes. Should we tell them who it is now, or
Nah,
should we tease? Do a little tease.
we'll tease.
All right, we'll tell you in a few minutes, right before he comes on. In the meantime, I've got something for Mr. Greenberg. Remember, we did a show yesterday, and you
I've
remember
already,
what that
no, I forgot the whole thing. What did we do?
I know every day is kind of like the same,
Wait,
but we talked a little bit about the 56 game winning streak or hitting streak.
DiMaggio.
That was yesterday. I think was the last day of it, which you know what this means today is.
The first day it wasn't.
Yes, that is, and we're going to hear directly from Joe D himself about that day. So let me do this, get this, and then I got to do this, and here we are.
Look at
Take it
that
away.
swing, man.
Take it away, Joe.
First, got some recognition after my 30th some odd game, and it wasn't thought very much of then, but it gained momentum, and after, of course, the 40th game, why it built up to such a crescendo that the pressure started to apply to me. We generally walk to the ballpark from the Cleveland Hotel to the municipal grounds, which is only about 6-block walk. However, we decided to take a cab this particular day, and as entering the cab, the fellow looked over at me and he says, "Aren't you Joe?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I got a feeling you're going to be stopped tonight." It was a night game, and Lefty liked to climb all over the fellow. He felt very bad about the whole incident throughout that night because he kind of felt the jinx was put upon me. We started a little bit of a rally in one inning, and they brought in Jim Bagby, a relief pitcher, and there was a man on first base, and I was at bat with one out, and I hit a ball to the left of Lou Boudreau, who was managing the ball, who was playing shortstop. And as going to field the ball took a bad hop, and he got his glove up in time and threw to second base and completed the double play, and that's how that streak was broken.
Wow. Amazing, isn't that? Amazing, the ghost of Joe D. Just, it's funny, it's like you think about that streak, and I forget, I don't remember the stats, but they had like he batted whatever over that streak. I think it's 3 something or another, which wasn't even that much out of line with his normal average. I mean, it was like, I think his lifetime average was what, 341 or something, or 327. That was a lot.
Yeah.
But just imagine getting a base hit, not just getting safely on base, but getting a base hit then more than 1/3 of the season straight. That's absolutely astounding. Again, if I'm picking one record that will never be broken, that would be the one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. 400, 406. Man,
Well, this year someone will hit 400.
if there is an opportunity, this would be it.
Yeah, well, I won't count that though. It wouldn't count to me. Like to me, the last batter hit 400 is Ted Williams, and it will stay that way even no matter who hits 400 this year.
What if somebody actually hits in all 60 games?
Well, that would be a real record. That would count. That would literally count. That'd have to. I mean, it's interesting. That's the one record that you could literally accept as actually broken, given that. There's probably some other ones like consecutive shutout innings or something, but I don't see that. I remember when they're showing that Joe D thing you're just showing, they had 44, and I think that's what Pete Rose got to.
Yeah, he got to that.
He got to 44, and I think the record that he tied and that Joe D was tying at that point was Wee Willie Keeler.
Wee Willie Keeler, yeah.
I remember that too.
He was the National League.
Yeah, that was like 1906 or something. A few years before. Amazing.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I just thought I'd try it out since that was perfectly aligned with Friday and being excuse the intrusion. So
right.
Good
And
stuff.
Joe's his hitting streak got intruded upon.
Yeah, that's the ultimate intrusion.
Yeah. So excuse us, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. But
Oh,
yeah, that
sorry.
was cool to hear Joe's thoughts on it.
I agree with you there.
So, this whole thing with the Redskins is just getting worse.
It basically goes to the point that,
and I'm sorry I said the Redskins.
Right.
It really meant the Washington franchise until we know what their new name is.
well, it all
it's
goes
getting
to the
worse.
owner, man, Dan Snyder. And I'm sorry I said Dan Snyder because his name really shouldn't be right. So I mean, the man is, I mean, I think many people see him as, me included, the worst owner in the NFL. And there are some pretty bad ones, but he is the worst owner in the NFL. He's a mean-spirited, total. Look, many years ago, one of his closer friends in high school, guy who claimed he was his best friend in high school, used to work for me. And he told me a story about Snyder, which, again, this could be hearsay. So I'm saying this is the story the guy told me. I don't have any corroborative proof of this. So many of you may know or may not know that Dan Snyder made a lot of his money using cheap labor in contact centers. I don't know if it was undocumented or not, but it was cheap. And he would go visit the contact centers, and he'd be walking down the halls. And if a contact center worker would go up to him and go, "Hi, Dan," he'd fire the person for calling him by his first name. That's what the guy told me. Now, is it true? I don't know. Does it fit his personality? Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, his arrogance is just off the charts, disgusting. And he's just a short little fat guy, right? So, he's very unlikable. I don't understand how, I don't know. Sometimes it makes you wonder about how the universe is organized. Let's just say that.
Well, it goes a ways to make Jerry Jones look good.
Yeah.
And Snyder is an expert of making Jerry Jones look good at this point.
Well, I guess great expertise.
Lots of experience, lots of training. He's worked hard, and the hard work has paid off. I'm so glad
he made his fortune. Jerry Jones pays him to make him look good.
It's a unique skill set. Let's put it like that. So, yeah. I mean, before we bring on our guest, because I see him in the green room
eating cronuts. No, eating wax apple.
We got to get the fruit plate going. That's maybe some bread from Fruit and Bread.
Yeah,
some of that kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I've never looked. Cronuts are croissants and donuts apparently made together. I don't know if it's like what do they call that? A tofurkey or whatever that is.
Oh,
right. Or a turducken.
Turducken.
Yeah. I don't know. John Madden was big on turducken.
Hey, the 6-legged turkey, it actually kind of looked good on those Thanksgivings when they were just ripping it off and like.
Did you ever eat it?
Heck no. Are you kidding me?
No. Like me never eating a cronut, man. I wouldn't eat it. No way I would eat a cronut. It's like they're made in New York and they're basically made out of fat, right? They're made out of fat boiled in oil with dough, right? So it's like.
Sounds nutritious.
Well, sugar, so it must be nutritious.
Oh, before we go forward, before we bring him on, you said you got something special you're wearing right now.
Oh, yeah. That's right. So, in honor of the fact that finally there's going to be some Major League Baseball next week, my brother actually sent me. Now, note it says New York Yankees, but
that's a big New York logo.
But look at that.
Oh yeah, 2020. There it is.
20.
There it is. Nice.
The season begins. All 60 games.
All right. So yes, and for me, in honor of the baseball season starting next week, I'm wearing a Rams jersey, Rams shirt. Yes. Matter of fact, this one. Notice what it says. It doesn't say Los Angeles. Let me do this. Let me get a little wider. It doesn't say the Los Angeles Rams. It just says Los Rams. So I've gone bilingual. I've got a couple of bilingual shirts. Ram shirts that I thought I'd.
Wow.
It's a unique occasion because of what's going on next week, and I really don't have I used to be a Phillies fan when I was a little kid growing up in Wilmington, right, 30 minutes from Philly. Gary Maddox was my favorite
Cool.
player. Steve Carlton was my favorite pitcher, but
Yeah, then you found out a little more about him.
yeah, I learned as I grew. I learned more, and I was like, huh,
Right. He wore long white robes.
So, needless to say, I spent more time and effort on other things, and of course, the Rams has always been my favorite. And the Los Rams, I just dig bilingual
That's
Rams.
an interesting one.
Yeah. So, with all that, are we ready to bring our guest on?
Yeah, I think we are. The man,
Because I got a question to ask him that's a Rams related question. I bet he knows where I'm going with this.
You introduce him, you ask the question, and we'll go from there.
All right, let me bring on to the show the president. And wait a minute, it's not just the president of the San Jose Sharks, the team, but you have another title, right?
Yeah, Shark Sports and Entertainment, the umbrella brand, not just the NHL team, the AHL team. We have 3 buildings where people learn to skate and a variety of other things as well. So, yeah, if we're trying to make up fancy titles, sure, Shark Sports and Entertainment.
I see you dressed in your formal wear today.
Well, I'm wearing a collar.
I know.
Better than you guys.
Exactly what I'm saying. I don't see any collar here or over there either.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, we said all that and we didn't even really get his name out. Jonathan Becher joins us. This is great. Thanks for coming on, man.
Pleasure. Really looking forward to it. I have, by the way, lots to say about your 10-minute run into the show, including Cronuts and the DiMaggio record. But I'll let you guys run the show, not me.
No, you can say what you want, man.
Yeah, we want to hear it, man.
First of all, Cronuts is a very East Coast thing. So see, look, that's East Coast bias in the media happening all over again. Out here, if you wanted to be topical to the West Coast, you'd say something like a sushi rito. Do you know what that is?
Hell no.
Afraid.
I have no idea.
It's sushi burrito style.
Oh, God. Oh, that hurts my stomach.
Yeah, that just doesn't sound right.
Then how about tachos?
Oh, come on.
Those are tater tot nachos.
Oh my God.
Again, that's worse than Cronuts.
Oh my God. That's
Congratulations.
I don't know if it's okay. One last one.
That's just dessert. Bi-coastal.
I want to hear the last
dessert?
one.
Okay,
I just
how
want to
about
hear the last one.
What?
Yeah, a brookie.
That sounds all right. Brookie sounds deep. What is it?
What is? I don't even
It's
know.
a brownie cookie.
Oh yeah, I'm all right.
I could go with that one.
Yeah, that one's good.
I mean, I didn't even know that. So wait a minute, is that like look more like a cookie that tastes like a brownie, or a brownie that tastes that's not as chewy as a normal brownie? I mean, what's that look like? Even?
Yeah, you make brownies in the shape of cookies, and you cook them longer so they're crispier, like cookies are, but they have the texture when you bite into them of brownies.
That sounds like a winner to me, man.
Sounds like a soft centered chocolate cookie.
I would
trying to devolve everything. Come on, a little marketing, Paul. A little marketing.
I'm doing deconstruct. I'm an analyst. I'm deconstructing.
Right.
Hey, I like the name and I like the food. Brookie sounds cute and the food sounds good.
Listen, you know what? See that? You've already made a fundamental change to the players. In the green room, from now on, we're going to have brookies.
Brookies.
No more
Brookies
Cronuts. Cronuts are out. Brookies are in.
Your job is done, man.
Thank you for being on the show.
Should I mic drop and just walk out now?
I got to say this, though. I was looking at your Twitter profile page, and one thing really stood out. I like this. Let me see if I can bring this up. Of course, I'm covering everybody's face, but I hope you can see what I'm pointing out to.
Yeah.
You have fan and president as part, and you lead with the fan. So tell me, how long were you a fan before you became the president?
Well, the franchise officially started in 1991, and our building we're in now opened in 93. I went to a game. I think I was at game 4 in the new building. So I became a fan that day because I grew up on the East Coast, moved out to California. Franchise, I didn't get to go the first 2 years. It was nearby in something place called the Cow Palace, which smells exactly like it sounds, by the way. Not anymore, but it did back then. So I became a fan in 1993. I became a season ticket holder in 1999, I guess, a partial season ticket holder. And I didn't become the president of the franchise until late 2017. So I don't know, 20 years before, I guess.
So-
I'm a fan first.
Who did you root for before you rooted for the Sharks?
In hockey?
Yeah.
That's a little bit like asking who's your favorite kid. You're not allowed to ask those questions. There was no life in hockey before the Sharks existed.
Okay.
I'll just say my parents were New Yorkers, so all the New York teams can guess that maybe I rooted for them. How about that?
Fair enough. Do you?
Well,
That actually brings up another question. Who else do you currently root for?
Wait. Who else do I currently look for?
Other sports.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love sports. I'm a sports junkie.
So who
My
else?
joke is if I was walking down the street and a bunch of kids were playing tiddlywinks, I'd have to watch them and see how the game. Of course, wearing a mask at that point, but I mean, we have a thing here, which is Bay Area Night. So all the teams cooperate on a variety of things. We don't view that we're competitive or supportive. So I'm actually a season ticket holder for the 49ers as well. Sorry, Brent. I know we're going to have a debate about Marshall Faulk at some point. I can tell that's coming already. I'm a big Giants baseball fan. The Earthquakes won last night and 2 nights ago in a huge come from behind fashion. They were down 3-1. That's the MLS team. So, I mean, the Warriors, it's impossible to live in the Bay Area and not have become a fan of them as well. So I like all the Bay Area sports.
So you give
all the series of teams that are in New York. Sorry, go ahead.
So wait, so have you given up on the New York teams and just root for the Bay Area then? Or do you kind of root for both?
Well, some of the New York teams you kind of have to give up on right now.
Well, those teams actually, other than the Knicks, those are the New York teams. I gave up on those teams before I started rooting for them. As far as it goes, I'm still a Giants fan, hardcore. New York though, still a Yankees fan. Obviously,
wait, Paul, you're a traditionalist. Don't you need to say New York Football Giants? You can't.
We talked about this last week.
Yeah,
we had Russell on the show. What's Russell's last name again? Russell Sabetti on last week. Of course, he's from the Giants, and I was kind of promoting the show on LinkedIn. I was gonna tag the team, and it does still say, even on Twitter, on LinkedIn, New York Football Giants. And I'm like, wait a minute, they haven't been the New York Baseball Giants since 1957. I think we're okay to just say the New York Giants at this point.
I'm right there.
By the way, this is, and probably we're going in the wrong direction, but this is one of both the challenges and the beauty of my job, which is sports is very much about tradition. And by and large, most people around the sports spend their lives looking backwards. Sports records, you guys were talking about DiMaggio on the way in. We're all about history. But if you ground yourself too much in history, you're not ready for pandemics when they hit. You're not doing the things that the tech world tries to do, which is look forward all the time. And how do you look forward but honor tradition is a tough challenge to do as a team president.
So how have you figured it out? What have you done, actually?
So look, if I have a magic answer, I'm sure not sharing it with your viewers because then I'm going to
all those team presidents are going to steal it from you. The ones watching.
Hey, I just want to pop up a comment from who else? Bob Fagel, a notorious Boston fan, and of course, yeah. Exactly. I'm glad, John, that you and I were right there on that one.
Yeah.
Thanks. Go ahead.
We'll leave it alone. We'll be pleasant to everyone today. How about that?
Well, I'll leave that to you guys to be pleasant.
Bob is saying LA number 10. He doesn't understand geography. I'm not in LA. I'm in Northern California.
No, he's doing that for my benefit, even though I don't live there. Bob. All right. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for that note. All right. Let's talk about the bubble, man. You guys, it's really interesting. A lot of attention has been paid to what's going on with baseball and basketball, and maybe because there's been some missteps on both of those leagues. You guys kind of flew under the radar and got to the bubble situation. Explain how that happened.
So look, I mean, I'm biased. I'm a hockey guy. I run a professional team, so that's part of our mantra. That's kind of who hockey is. Hockey is a little bit of a below the radar sport, which by the way is a potential problem, which is I think it's probably the most underappreciated sport in the US.
Great.
It's sort of, for those that aren't hockey fans, it combines the artistry of basketball or maybe soccer, if you believe in the beautiful game, with a little bit of the viciousness and the hitting of American football and stuff like that. So there's a lot to like there, but because most people don't skate and haven't been on ice, they underappreciate how difficult the sport is, how fast people are going, how multi-skilled. So, Brent, the short answer to your question is we're just almost always an under-radar sport, which is a part of the problem in the first place. The second thing is, which is to our credit, is we're just extended our collective bargaining agreement for 4 more years, potentially 5 more years. There were 2 years left on the current one. So the new agreement is essentially a 6+1 agreement. And that was done somewhat under the radar as well. I don't want to throw any other sport under the Zamboni.
Yeah, they deserve it.
But some other sports, including one that Paul is particularly passionate about, they've aired their dirty laundry in public. And, my credit to the NHL, to the NHL Players Association, to everyone involved with this. There have been some really tough negotiations that happened over the last 2 months, but I'm going to guess, unless you were looking really closely, you heard very little about it. And we tied the bubble, the return to play, together with the extension to the CBA. They were both done simultaneously,
wow,
which made it even doubly complicated, if you will. So that gives even extra credit. And because of all that, I mean, the protocols are somewhat similar between different sports. Some of them are a little bit different. Our bubble is pretty darn tight. We left open what cities it would be in till almost the very end of the negotiation. And I think that worked out well for us. Some other sports, again, I don't want to throw anybody, as I said, under the Zamboni, not under the bus, because you have to use hockey metaphors. Other sports picked areas that looked maybe okay 45 days ago, but have turned into hot spots now, which makes it more problematic. We investigated, I think it was 10 different cities, narrowed it down to 4 or 5. And by say we, that's the euphemism we. I didn't do the investigation. I'm not taking credit for this at all. And eventually picked 2 cities, as you probably saw, in Canada. And the reality is where we are right now, Canada has done a better job, at least at the current state. And so between Toronto and Edmonton, that's where the East and West are going to play. The other things we did is change the format. This is not the normal Stanley Cup finals that you're used to. There are 24 teams in the playoffs as opposed to the normal 16, and the bottom 16 of the 24. So think of it as the top 8 get a bye, kind of like March Madness in the NCAA. The bottom 8 have a qualifying round where they play each other in a best of 5. And the 8 that win now move on, get reseeded, and now we have the standard 16, and we do the best of that. So I guess that was a long-winded way of saying is just put all the details on the table from the beginning, almost from the day that the lockdown started, and just work through them collaboratively. And partially because we're an equal participation rate league, revenue gets split 50-50. There's a hard salary cap, no luxury tax. It worked out well.
Well, I mean, look, to your credit, you did keep it under. I understand where the disadvantage comes from just generally, but specifically in this case, you really deserve credit. I mean, look, the thing that irritated not just me, but literally probably millions of baseball fans was how disgusting the whole thing was. I mean, it was like basically the entire the players and the owners came out as just basically greedy bastards who all they wanted was money, and they didn't care about the health crisis. They didn't care about the game as something to help people. I mean, contrast that to, after 9/11, what went on in New York, where they did care, right? Yeah. And it was a huge difference. I mean, it inspired New York City to come back in part, right? And now it was, and in baseball, it started with Blake Snell's whining, and then went on from there to get worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where you would even listen on their channel, which is basically it's a rah-rah channel, even though it's generally got a lot of good broadcasters, but it's a rah-rah channel for baseball on MLB, on Sirius XM radio. And you would hear them saying, I wish these guys would just shut up and just let us know when it's over and tell us what happened. Right. And that's literally, and these are the commentators who literally love baseball to the point that that's their life and what they do. Right. And they're literally sitting there. Why don't these people just be quiet? Right. So that's it. You guys deserve an enormous amount of credit as a league and as individuals and as players too, the players, for treating this the way it should have been treated by every sport. Right. Which is you take care of your own business. And you're cognizant at all times of the crisis that the world is going through, which is literally all that anyone would ask of anyone doing anything.
I agree. I mean, look, every discussion I was in, and I was in dozens of these discussions, the very first question was, is it safe to do this? The health and safety of the players, the team officials, the referees, the fans, if they're going to be fans. I mean, one of the eye-opening things that happened to me early on is someone, because we went in 72 hours from putting on a hockey game, this is back in March 8th, with 17,000 fans, to the very next day thinking we could put on a hockey game, but there would be no fans, to the day after that saying, oh, no games, no events, no nothing. So that was a weird 72 hours.
Yeah.
But in that process, we said, well, what are the minimum number of people you can have in a building to actually put on an event like this, right? Because if you're a casual fan, you might just count the players on both sides, a couple of refs, maybe an equipment manager, and go, yeah, you can put on this with like 30 or 40 people. And the reality is, if you're going to broadcast this on TV, if you're going to worry about health and safety, if you're going to have a team doctor, if you're going to have security guards, if you're going to have food and beverage so the players can eat and stuff like that, if you're going to have a broadcast truck, a radio truck, the minimum number of people to put on in a game is like 250.
Holy God.
Right. And exactly right. The minute you go, wow, 250, you realize it's not a very small bubble. It's a pretty big bubble. And therefore, there are a ton of details that you just don't think through that you have to get right. So you can't do this in short order. It's not a one day of planning. It's weeks of planning to get even a very tight bubble right.
Well, and not only that, you can't do anything wrong while you're doing it, right? That's the other thing. One mistake, and a lot of people get sick, right?
Yep.
So that's what's even more, frightening, but again, look, honestly, and I'm not saying this because you're on the show, but if I'm looking at all the leagues and the responses, the NHL has had the single best handling of all of it. And I'd say it's hard to say with the NFL because they're a mess in 50 other ways, but and they're more mea culpa on the social activism side, but and NBA's done some pretty good work. I have to say that too. But I'd say the NHL has handled it the most effectively all in all. And I think I would get agreement from a lot of people. So let me ask you another question, which kind of goes.
Okay, I'll pass on your compliments to the commissioner. Tell him.
Let him know. Let him know. Let's say, tell him his biggest fan, which I.
Yeah.
Right? So look, you were CMO at SAP, and chief digital officer too, and now you're president of an entertainment and media group, including a team. Two wildly different jobs, right? Maybe, right? So my question, given that, how first of all, how difficult? I mean, look, when you finished with SAP, you have to transition to a job like this. Your head has to be different. How did you even get to the point where you could wrap your head around this job to begin with?
So, I mean, in weird ways, the job is fundamentally different, but it has some very similar elements. And just thinking where I'm going to go with this, Paul, you're gonna smile maybe in part of this. So I mean, look, functionally, there's a marketing department, there's a sales department, there's a finance department, right? There's operations. I mean, if you just took out an org chart, I mean, it's not the, 90 to 100,000 people that SAP has. It's much smaller than that, but it's structured in roughly similar ways. But at its heart, it's a consumer company, right? If we were tech guys, we call it B2C rather than B2B, right? You're primarily talking about impulse buy, etc. But there's some really fundamental difference. You and I have talked a lot over the years, including in my role as a CMO. And you know that my index was always, what is the experience of a customer with the offering that you have?
Yeah.
Whether you call that CX or UX, which gets misapplied, or any of the words that come out now, or just good old fashioned CRM, the way it should have been, as opposed to how some people have implemented it.
Right.
The idea is, if you do your job right when you have any product or offering, you start with, what do the people want that are going to use your product, and how do you deliver that in a way that surprises and delights them occasionally, but more often than not fulfills their needs. And do that in a repeatable way. And if you do it, if you're smart about it, it's authentic and it's end to end. And you look for the weaknesses in your offering. And your weakness could literally be in the offering, the software product, the hockey game, the whatever it is, the service. It could be in the support system around it. It could be in the price of it. It could be in the marketing of it. It could be the selling of it. It could be, the weakness could be anywhere. But if you think about this from an end to end, not from your point of view, not from how you deliver it, but how it's, tech guys like to say, how it's consumed, how it's used, how it's accepted. You find that weakness and then focus on fixing that weakness, then you get a better product, because the weakness is always where it breaks. Nobody remembers the best part of you. They remember the worst part of you. So that was always my mental model in tech. As it turns out, that mental model worked out really well, even though it was a whole series of steps I didn't understand when I showed up in sports entertainment. But mapping the end-to-end process from the consumer's point of view of, how did they decide that they wanted to go to a Sharks game? And how did they decide whether they're going to be a full or a partial season or an individual game? How did they acquire the tickets? And how did they use them? And what did they, and walking through that entire process to find the weakness, first of all, taught me about the process, because I didn't know. I mean, I was a fan, so I knew my version of the process.
Right.
And I already knew a bunch of the weaknesses because I'd experienced them. And so I started by what I hated. And I shouldn't say hate, that's such a strong word.
Yeah.
Because I was a season ticket holder, I used to eat in the building all the time, but I got tired of eating in the building because it was the same boring food night after night. So I started with one weakness, which was food and beverage, and says, I'm going to turn that from what I later found out was one of the lowest rated things not from casual fans. Because if you only came to the building once or twice, the food was good enough. But if you came 20 or 30 times a year, it was boring, not enough variety, it wasn't good value, et cetera, and said, I'm going to make this a food and beverage destination. I'm going to think about this as, people come here to be entertained, and therefore we have to compete with getting people off their couch watching Netflix or your favorite streaming service, going to, well, you used to be able to go to the malls, going to the mall, going to a fancy restaurant, and therefore that's a weak part of it. Okay, we fixed that. Took a year and a half to get it right, but now it's one of the most highly rated things. Oh, parking and traffic flow is a big deal of that experience as well. Some of it's out of my control. Too bad. I got to talk to the city and the county about traffic flow and putting in more light rail and stuff like that. So long-winded answer, Paul, is map the user experience. We don't use the word user in sports and entertainment, right? But that's the word they use in tech. Figure out where you're the weakest. Focus on those elements first. The old whack-a-mole game. Yeah. Eventually, those are not the weakest. Now find your next weakness and just do it step by step. And I, got my hands dirty in the first year and a half so that I understood it.
Wow.
Hey, what? Oh,
you
just want to jump in. Would it be fair to say that the league was at its most popular when Gretzky was still playing?
Would it be fair to say that hockey was at most popular? Well, it depends, I guess, on how you define popularity. If your definition of popularity is largest number of people having brand recognition of the players and therefore occasionally turning in, then probably. Even today, as Gretzky is probably the most householdy name when it comes to hockey. It's one of the challenges of our sport, right? We wear helmets. There's not a lot of individual personality. The sport grew up out as a team sport. I know there's lots of team sports, but for many, many years, the individual superstars didn't really talk about themselves. You put hockey before your own. A lot of the players didn't have social media presence until relatively recently. And so Gretzky is, even though Gordie Howe might have been the original, Gretzky is still probably the most famous and most well-known player even though he hasn't played for quite a long time as well. And so that's the challenge. If we ask an average sports fan, name 10 pro basketball players, can do it pretty easy. Pro football players, they can do it pretty easy. Pro baseball players, probably less easy now than it was a few years ago, but they still could probably do it as well. Pro hockey, I'd like to think, a hockey fan can do it, but an average sports fan may not be able to get to 10 or certainly couldn't get to 20. And that's a challenge. So we've got to do a better job as a league of marketing the athletes themselves.
So this, to me, the bubble situation, I think it presents a really great opportunity for
Absolutely.
the NHL to reintroduce themselves to this audience of young folks. So what you mentioned, there were some changes to the way the playoffs are going to work. Did the league think of things specifically in mind to attract the new young folks to put into the game to experiment in this particular bubble time? Because, hey, if it doesn't work, you go back to what the traditional after this year. But did they think specifically about how can we integrate things in? Like, we know the young guys like the esports. They like to feel like they're a part of the game. Are any things like that being integrated in during this kind of, the bubble as a trial and experiment specifically for that reason?
The answer is absolutely yes. I forget exactly how the old quote goes, never let a crisis go to waste, right? So it's a crisis. Look, it's a severe one. It's financial impact on every sports league, of course, but it's a chance to do things we never could have done before. So let me just give you a very simple example. Hockey, more so than any other sport, I think, is about sightlines. If you're a hockey fan, you're adamant about where you like to watch a game in a venue. Some people like to be smack on the blue line. Some people like a little elevation. Some people like to be behind one of the goalies, etc. Some people like big diagonals. It's less true in other sports. But there are a limited number of places that you can put cameras in a hockey game because they block the fan sightlines when they're actually watching the game. So the pandemic has a chance for us to do the reverse. As opposed to programming for the people in the venue first, and then secondarily programming for those that watch streaming, TV or some other service as well, we're actually going to program it the other way around because there's no or limited number of people in the venue. Even over time, as we open up, I'm guessing we're going to have smaller number of fans. So we can put cameras in different places we couldn't do before. And imagine a situation, and I'm giving you hints without committing to what actually is going to happen because I want some of this to be a surprise. There's a little bit of a drama that you want to build up as well. Imagine that you don't have to consume the game by a fixed TV position that your broadcaster picks for you. Imagine that you could select which way you want it, which matches what you're used to watching when you're in the venue yourself because of what your angle. Imagine one day, and I don't think this will happen this summer, where you might even be able to control the camera yourself for some fraction of time because there's enough feeds so you could follow a player, maybe not the one who has the puck, and so you could live out the ultimate Gretzky fantasy, which was skate to where the puck's going to be, and you could try to do that yourself. Imagine those were all built into the technology of the game. In fact, one of the things in our own building we're thinking is rather than piping in fake crowd noise, what if we let season ticket holders get themselves mic'd up on their seats? And as they watch the game, get their live reaction piped back in the building so the players hear authentic fan reaction and we restore hometown sort of the specialness of that, of playing in your own venue. Now, there's some issues because there's 6 seconds of TV delay. So maybe you have to actually do it by listening to the radio broadcast rather than still details to be worked out. But we are reimagining how the game is presented because there may be little to no fans there.
I got to say that latter, that what you just described about real fans from their actual seats, is a fantastic idea. I didn't even occur to me, honestly. And, as fans, we're all trying to figure out how we're going to handle all of this too, right? In every league, every team, every season. And, we were talking earlier a little bit and, I'm going to be watching 60 Yankee games and I'll probably watch all 60, right? I will, and I'll enjoy it, but it won't mean the same thing exactly. So I don't like the idea of putting a runner on second base during in extra innings. And I think that's horrible. I'm a traditionalist at most levels. That to me, those kind of things, like honestly, when it came to hockey, one of the reasons I kind of moved a little bit away from it was because I used to love hockey. I remember Marv Albert used to do the Rangers when I was a kid, right? He cut his teeth on the Rangers. And I was watching, Ed Jockerman, right? I mean, people like that as the goalie. I mean, it was like that era. So I go a long way back with hockey, and Vic Hadfield and all these other guys, right? So, but one of the reasons I moved away was when the rules started changing, it started going to shootouts and stuff. I loved overtimes. I still do with football the same way. I hate all the rules that change that. Play an extra quarter, let it run its way through. I mean, that made it much more enjoyable, much more fun, and much more intense. And everyone's basically saying, well, younger generations have less attention span, and therefore, but honestly, if you manage to go through 3 full periods of hockey, a 4th period is not going to kill you. And if you really have a short attention span, you're not going to make it through 3. Right. So to me, there's always a very specious argument about that. But the thing is, I mean, look, again, I'm pretty focused on contemporary things. That's what I do. Right. As part of on the tech side, I'm always looking at visionary, and in sports too. I'm fascinated by the new sets of statistics, which, even as overwhelming as they may be, are really interesting in how they're even coming to the conclusion about how to present them. So, that said, though, ultimately, sports is entertainment, right?
Yes.
It's enjoyment. It's actually passionate entertainment, right?
I say we're in the business of making memories. That's our fundamental core.
You're exactly right, and that's what I want out of sports. And I think any sports fan, young or old, ultimately wants that, to remember when. It's what you said earlier about the conundrum you're up against, history versus looking ahead, because the history is so important to sports. I mean, look, what was the first thing I said? Marv Albert cut his teeth on. I mean, that's 1961.
Well, look what we started the show off with.
Yeah, Joe DiMaggio. I'm just saying. So, but see, the thing is, so this year, the benefit I think the NHL has, the NBA will have, even baseball will have, is they'll be able to get away with experiments this year.
Exactly right.
Because everyone has accepted a different reality at this point. Everyone, for everything, right? Like, think of this. I was talking to someone on a call earlier today, and we look at ourselves right now. I'm dressed in a t-shirt. Brent's dressed in a t-shirt. You're dressed in a team polo shirt. In the past, we'd be doing these things with nice shirts, or at worst business casual. Now, no one cares what you're dressed like, as long as you're dressed. Right.
I'd still be wearing the same thing.
Right. I mean, that's it. It's like, if you're on an analyst call with SAP or Salesforce or something, I'm dressed exactly like this. Nothing changes. Right. So but again, that's that new reality. It gives you a chance to experiment. Now, so let me ask you that. So let's assume in the course of things, you find something like the broadcasting to the seats, or through the seats to the team works. Okay. Yep. And at some point, let's say a year or so down the road, we get back to kind of a normal meaning we can fill seats in stadiums again. What happens to something like that? So
I don't think there's any going back. I think many of these experiments, I shouldn't say there's no going back. So I would admit I am biased because of my long career in technology. And so I probably index more towards looking forward than looking backwards. As much as I'm a huge sports guy, you pointed out my Twitter profile, I start with the word fan. I am a fan, right? But I am not pining for the day that we go back to where things were on March 1. I want to get an approximation of that. I want fans in the building. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm not going to try to restore every single thing that existed at that point. And so I'm hoping that many of these experiments will become permanent. I'll give you a very simple one. We didn't do any e-gaming before. We were all live sports entertainment. We started our Twitch channel 3 days or 4 days, forgive me, I forget the exact, after the shutdown happened. And none of us are I shouldn't say none of us, most of us are not hardcore gamers, right? So we're like, well, it's really boring just to do the simulation mode. That's what most sports teams have done one computer playing against the other computer. I mean, and people watched that because they were starved for sports for the first week or two. So we said, all right, we're going to do something different. We're going to let hardcore fans get into the game itself, get into the simulation. So we ran a contest and we asked fans who won to give us their name to put it on the jersey, their number, but more than that, how tall they were so we could modify the simulation. Did they shoot left or shoot right so we could modify the. We made a bunch of changes so it felt like them, and who their favorite players were, either current or historical ones, alumni. And we put them on a line with them. We said, this way you feel like you're in the game, which is cool in itself, right? That makes it a little bit different. And now we've expanded it so it's not just Sharks versus Sharks. Now we play some other teams as well. But early on, because honestly, we were experimenting. We didn't know what we were doing. We weren't experts with Twitch yet. We're much better at it now. During one of the first few games, by the way, we went 10-0 the first 10 games we put on. So that was really nice. But
well, you're playing yourself though. So
exactly.
the other you went.
Oh, see, you're not exactly.
You know your opponent.
So early on, I think maybe it was game 3. One of the fans got injured in the first period. Now, I don't mean real life injured.
No, right.
I don't mean he broke his thumb. I mean digitally injured. It turns out in Twitch, there's a switch that you can turn injuries off in the game, but we left it on because it was by default on. And, at first that was like, holy crap, one of the persons that won this contest is getting injured. But that guy was carried off the ice digitally by his favorite thing, taken back in the locker room.
Awesome.
That person then started live streaming their own Twitch channel to explain what actually happened. We had our GM, Doug Wilson, call him afterwards to see if we had to put him on injured reserve, etc. And look, he put all this on his social channels. It's one of his best experiences. I'm sure he'll remember that for years to come, if not decades to come.
The one thing I need to ask, though, were there brookies available for him back there when he was getting looked at?
No, because if you're injured, you get to have stronger things than brookies.
That's right. Bourbon.
Yeah, we'll make up a phrase or something.
Bourbon. So okay. Well, so wait. So what?
So we're going to continue this.
But what game did you
always
use simulation? Did you use NHL 2020 or something?
We used NHL 2020. Yeah.
Wow.
From EA.
So what kind of engagement did you see? How shocking was the engagement compared to? Well, you weren't doing any of this before, right? So what did you learn? So what were the big lessons, big takeaways from that?
Well, so first of all, we have to build up an audience just like you have to do everywhere. You have to build up an audience on social media. You have to build up an audience on this podcast. It takes time. But I don't know, 5 games, we got to like 5,000 subscribers, which is pretty good for NHL 2K, right? I mean,
kidding.
I think our goal is to get to 20,000 by the end of this calendar year. We're not there just yet, but we build a little bit every time we do that.
That's fantastic.
The second thing we learned is the more we individualize it, the better off we are. So people can pick, do they want alumni players? Do they want current players? We're playing against other teams in the NHL. We're creating fantasy leagues of teams that never existed. So we can pick a Gretzky and play them with a Howe, et cetera. And we're programming it, et cetera. So we're trying to simulate things that can't be done in the real world and using that to intrigue. Now, here's what's really cool. And yeah, sure, why not? I don't mind sharing this then we got our radio broadcaster. I mean, our actual real radio broadcaster, Dan Ruzunowski, who's been the voice of the Sharks from day one, and he's live broadcasting these games.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's actually calling them because we give him like every jersey name and number.
Wow.
For the entire game. And then we're like, well, this has worked so well. We're starting to put in our sponsors as well. We've changed the boards so they have our sponsor names on them. We actually had one sponsor who's got a disk drive component. I should probably not get to give away things if there was a hat trick and stuff like that, because you can use it for gaming things as well. So we found a way to actually these are called make goods in this business because we have commitments to actually put them into the virtual games as well. It's not the same as a real live game yet, but if I fast forward a year from now, it's pretty darn close.
Look, and it's engagement, man, to the deepest level. I mean, So
when a fan can hear his name called by the actual
Absolutely.
announcer.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
So I have 2 suggestions for you. One,
Okay.
since you do have the actual broadcaster,
Yeah.
run a contest, and then a fan becomes his color guy.
No, I like that. Okay.
That's one.
That
Okay.
is like they could be one Zoom box.
Well,
another
everyone,
Zoom
look,
box.
those who aren't playing would love to broadcast. Believe me,
Oh,
they
that'd be cool.
love that. The second one, which is a little less of a suggestion and more of something that's actually occurring in soccer, with FIFA though, with the FIFA game. So Charlie Shin, of course, and so Charlie with the MLS actually a couple of years ago worked out something, I believe, with EA Sports where they actually do data exchange, right? So what's going on in game based on, actual in the actual simulations is being captured, fed to MLS as well as EA. And then what's going on at the actual game with the behavior of the fan is also being fed into the game itself. So there's kind of this interchange of data, which is allowing the fan's individual experience to become enriched. So, for example, and again, these are examples that Charlie mentioned. I'm not sure they're actually using these yet. But for example, your favorite players, right? Yep. Then you'll get, let's say, a promotion involving your favorite player at the actual game, right? But because they're watching your behavior, playing the favorite player inside of FIFA. The other side is, though, if you're buying products A, B, C, or let's say you're buying product A, B, and C, and you're buying product A 5 times at the game, you'll actually see the ad on the stadium in the game, right? But what they're doing is they actually have a kind of a mutual data exchange so that behaviors can be increasingly, or individual behaviors are increasingly known and enriched, right? So it might be an idea, given you're already doing the simulation with NHL 2020. Talk to Charlie. Okay. There's a lot. What you're doing is fantastic.
Yeah.
So Paul, I'll give you another one. And if there's anybody from EA listening to us right now, give me a buzz. I'm at Jay Becher on pretty much every social media channel. What if when you have we'll do simulated games always now. And what if as soon as a real game finished, regardless of whether we won or lost that game, the elements of that game were fed directly into a simulated NHL 2K game, and a fan could replace one of our players with himself and try to make changes to what that player did to see if they could alter the outcome.
That would be amazing.
Replay that game and say, because I did something better than the superstar did, I caused them to win as opposed to lose or score another goal.
A lot of fan bitching, I'll tell you that.
Well, and then you could also add in, now they can look for a new contract. Okay, I'm better than sign me up right now. You got me.
Well, maybe their thumbs are better. I'm not sure they skate faster. But
yeah,
so this is great. I mean, I really enjoy this. We're got a couple minutes more to go. So I have to kind of turn back to something that we're going to discuss at some point. Now, how did you meet one of my favorite Rams of all time, Marshall Faulk? Because he truly is one of my favorite Rams of all time.
So, Brent, thank you for forcing me to say this on my broadcast. So, 2 roles ago, when I was chief marketing officer for SAP, we had a deep relationship with the NFL. We built an analytics engine for them, which, among other things, the public version of it is NFL.com/stats, where you can see not just traditional stats, but enhanced statistics as well. And we use that to show the power of the statistical engine that SAP had. For those of you who might have a technology background, you probably heard the word HANA, which is the core of that engine as well. And so we wanted people that were commentators, ex-NFL people that understood analytics to sort of help explain it. And as we looked around the league, Marshall seemed natural given his background and what it was. Honestly, my team picked Marshall for me, knowing that I'm a diehard Niner fan, and Marshall during his Ram career had many really good games for him. What they didn't know is right before the first time I had to do a show like this with Marshall, I told him a story, which is when I was younger, much younger, and early on in his relative career, when they were still in St. Louis, a friend of mine got me tickets to go see the Niners playing the Rams in St. Louis, and I was convinced that the Niners would beat them easily. And I think Marshall ran for, I don't know, 209 yards that day, or one of those just things. And I left the stadium that day both in awe of his skills and I don't want to say hating him. That's a terrible word to use, but pretty annoyed at him. So I told him that story right before we went live, and actually he was nice enough to treat it as a friendly story. And he gave me a picture, which is in my other office at work. It's not in this home office, of him from that day. He got somebody to track it down, and he signed it. He said, maybe not the best way to start a friendship, but a good way nonetheless.
Wow.
That is awesome. And matter of fact, I know why you were thinking the Niners are going to crush the Rams, because there was a time where the Niners beat the Rams 17 straight games. Twice a year, 17 straight.
Yes.
So exactly. I can understand your hubris in thinking that you guys are going to win. Now, I think that's a great story. I think Marshall Faulk is one of the greatest of all time. He's already in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's done a lot. He still holds some of those records. But as great as Marshall is, there is one guy that is greater than Marshall from the Rams' perspective. That is Eric, the Great Dickerson. He still holds not only the team record, but, you know, the league record for rushing yards in a season, 2105. Yep. He still owns the rookie rushing league record, 1808. And he still owns the most yards rushing in a playoff game at 248. He was the first guy to get to 10,000 in 7 years. I could go on, but I'll just say this. I appreciate your affection for Marshall, but it'll still be number 2 to Eric Dickerson. Sorry to have to say that. No, I'm not really.
Fair enough. But is Eric the all-time franchise rushing record leader or not?
See, he left after 4 years, so I'm going to say no. I know it is. It's Steven Jackson is actually though.
It is. It is Steven Jackson. That is correct.
He toiled in excruciating pain for like 8 years of total loss. Jeff Fisher, his head coach, which that's all I need to say about that one. But yeah, no, Marshall is great. Marshall, I mean, the greatest show on turf. We got our only Super Bowl with Marshall. Eric is still better. I'm just sorry to say that. Okay, I had to go. I had to do that, but
I'm just staying with Jim Brown.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying he's number 1, period. All
right. So let's ask you this, and I guess we got to start wrapping it up. Who is your favorite sports person of all time? Like
of
your
any sport.
Sports hero of any sport.
All right. I'm going to pick someone so obscure that you never have heard it before. So I'm a big believer in records that can never be broken. And so in baseball, I don't think it's DiMaggio. Sorry. I think it's easily Cy Young's complete game record. No one's ever going to come close to that record.
What is that? 560 something?
No, he won 511.
Oh, that's right. He won 500. Yeah.
I don't know
how many.
I think he had like 700 and something complete games. I don't remember exactly what the number is. It was ridiculous.
That's unbelievable.
You're right. That'll never get beaten. No one.
No one's going to come close.
No.
So since we started with baseball, I'll end with an obscure baseball player because I love it. 2 grand slams in 1 inning. You know who that is?
Yeah, I do actually. I got to remember though. It was a pitcher.
Fernando Tatis of the Cardinals.
It wasn't a pitcher.
Oh, I remember him. That wasn't that long ago either.
No,
that was like
1999 against the Dodgers.
2.
Wow, that'll never happen again.
Well, no. I'll tell you another thing. Who was it? There's a pitcher who played. Actually, I think he pitched for the Red Sox, who had 2 grand slams in the game. A pitcher.
Wow.
I want to say it might have been a Braves pitcher. Tony Cloninger, I think, might have been the guy. I can't remember now, but he had 2 grand slams in 1 game. Pitcher. Amazing. Earl Wilson, who was a pitcher, I think he had 4 grand slams as a pitcher in a season. I think. He had some insane number of homers related, some home run related record. I want to say it was Cloninger who hit the 2 grand slams in the game, though.
All right. I'm going to give you guys my never be broken in baseball.
Okay.
Barry Bonds, Paul knows where I'm going. Barry Bonds, 2004 season. The guy had he got on base more than he had official at bats.
Yep.
That will never happen again.
No.
By the way, yet another thing wrong with how statistics are kept in baseball. Sorry, MLB, but you keep statistics wrong. OBA is anyway. Never mind.
No, there's a lot of issues with baseball stats. Believe me. And honestly, as much as I'm a big look, I used to be a member of Sabre. Actually, I've been thinking about rejoining because I want to read some stuff that they're putting out. But and the guy we had on 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks already? Yeah. Don Spinda used to be the director of research until he retired of Stats LLC, right? I mean, so, and Don's a former classmate of mine at Northwestern, actually, so a big baseball historian. But I think a lot of the stats that they have now are so overdone, and it's almost like too much. There's a point where data, as you well know from all of us being in tech, where data actually can be, let's say, overused, and there's too much of it, and you really have to sometimes rely on more of the right brain than the left. I don't think baseball's figured that totally out.
Wait a minute. Can somebody tell me, is Jean-Claude Keely, wasn't he
He was a skier.
Yeah, Olympic downhill skiing.
Yeah. I don't know why he's mentioning him. Oh, that's his guy.
That's his favorite. Okay, really? I would have thought it'd be like a Ted Williams or somebody.
I remember Jean-Claude Keely. He was amazing.
Yeah.
And
I remember that guy. Yeah.
The only reason I was interested in skiing actually at one point was him.
Now, the guy that got me interested in skiing, and we're just going all over the place here.
That's all right.
Remember the wide world of sports, the way it started with the guy, that dude. I was like, damn, that had to have hurt. I forget the name. I forget the guy's name, but I was like, he was the agony of defeat guy.
He literally was the agony of defeat for all of us. Right.
Oh man, this has been fun, man. We really appreciate you taking time and talking about it.
Are you up for coming back at some point?
Of course, happy to do it.
Okay, fantastic, man. That's awesome.
Are you even allowed in the bubble at this point? Can anybody?
I am not allowed in the bubble.
No.
In fact, the bubble rules are I can't speak for any other sport because I'm not an expert, but ours are extraordinarily tight about who's allowed in the bubble and who's not. So, and I'm not.
Maybe, you know what? You can enter the contest to be the color guy.
What a great idea!
Thank you. I'll be looking for it.
I'll send you some Twitch royalty. If you send me 1,000 Bitcoin, I'll send you back 2,000.
Good deal.
Oh, man. Wait a minute, wasn't that the scam of
deal? Wow. Okay. I'll do that.
I'll look for that on Twitter, man. Oh man, hey Jonathan, it's been great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we'll be watching. We'll definitely be watching, man. It's gonna be great.
Appreciate it, Brett.
Look, I'll tell you what. I'm a Rangers fan first, always, but you've made me a San Jose Sharks fan second. So
glad to hear that.
You absolutely there.
Well, we went through 2 hockey teams down here in Atlanta. They just, not a good fit down here.
No.
So I'm a free agent. I'll be looking out for you guys.
The ice melts.
All right. Well, hey, on behalf of Jonathan, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players. We'll see you next week. We'll be talking to somebody about something. You'll have to find out what.
I think on the regular show, Bob Stutz. So we'll see you then.
Bob, who is with SAP. We can't get away from SAP. Anyway, have a good one.